Hey, folks, welcome back to another Health and Tech with Amanda Nystrom, National Health Board Certified Health and Wellbeing Coach. Amanda, what are we talking about today?
Hey, JD. Today we're talking about living simpler with an emphasis on stress management.
Interesting. And how does living simpler help stress management?
Well, so I've been thinking a lot about stress management and as a whole, and there's so many things that go into it. I mean, you and I have talked about and quite a few over the last few months, and there's just if you really apply stress management to most topics, you can find the ins and outs of like how it can be applied to managing your stress better. And so, I mean, we even got down to the stress of how stress impacts your cells. That's pretty nitty gritty, right? That's a little odd, but we figured it out. Um, so I, one of the things that has worked really well for me over the years is figuring out how to make my life simpler so that when stress is happening, which is often, it's not as complicated and it's not as intricately woven, like the spaghetti of brains.
Okay. Well, now we've talked about how stress can bad stress can shorten your telomeres. And if your telomeres are shortened, you have a higher impact for or higher opportunity to increase your disease profile,
Mhm.
including the ultimate disease, which is death. Um, and we don't want that to be short, but how does living simpler or living simply, how does this like directly impact our stress management?
So I think it's a multi pronged approach. One, when you live simpler, you have less to manage. To quote Greg McCown, who is known as the essentialist, which I will probably be doing a lot in this episode. Have you ever found yourself stretched too thin? Have you ever felt both overworked and underutilized? Have you ever found yourself majoring in minor activities? Do you ever feel busy but not productive? Like you're always in motion but never getting anywhere? And if you distill down living simply, it's essentially living with the essentials and having boundaries around things that are non-essential, but that we have a tendency to fill our lives up with because we like to say yes to things. Saying no is hard. And
I
it's all of
think,
those things that cause us a huge amount of stress.
one of the other things that he says, and I'm going to tie this in, um, is that, one of the definitions of success is a slow morning. Now, when you apply that to, let's say, mom, dad, career parents, career kids, what's a career kid? Well, you've got them in soccer, you've got them in piano, you've got them in swim team or whatever. And you're so busy making your children professionals that you have forgotten how to let them be kids and have a slow morning. And if you don't have that, you are living such a complicated life that you're idling at 75. I mean, you're Bill Burring through life, right?
Or
And
JD.
hey, now, I'm much better about it than I used to be. Um, and you know, stress management, it's a plastic term, right? Because you can't go up to somebody who is a power broker in whatever it is that they do and say, "You need stress management." And they're gonna be like, "Well, no shit, Sherlock, but I got things to get done."
That reminds me of Jack Nicholson in Anger Management and Adam Sandler.
Yeah. So how do we for those who have not yet figured it out or who have not yet made the choice to have the sacrifices that you and I have to have a simpler life, how do we how do we encourage a simpler life in a practical way for them?
Well, I think it kinda goes back to this quote that I just said, which is, "Have you ever found yourself stretched too thin or overworked and underutilized? Busy but not productive? Always in motion but never getting anywhere?" If we were to ask all of the people that attend the conferences that we run, these questions, I have no doubt that everybody would answer yes to at least one of them. And it's that constant commitment and that constant, expectation from society to fill our days, like you mentioned with kids, the career kids. I've never heard
Yeah,
that
career
term
kids.
before, but it makes
Yeah.
sense. Um, of filling our days with more and more activities and opportunities, and it's that fear of missing out, but by doing that, we are missing out. And by filling ourselves with nonstop productivity, we're not actually able to embrace the moments that we have. And I think it comes back to that quality of life statement of what do you want to look back on your life and see? Because I personally, like, when my days are jam packed and meetings and meetings and meetings, I don't remember that like 2 weeks later. I just remember being tired and stressed.
So, yes, and I think everybody would agree with that, especially in tech, right? Tech, once you reach a certain level in tech, it's a lot of busy work, right? And people don't think of it that way. They think, well, I'm prototyping, I'm building the MVP, I'm, debugging, whatever the case may be, right? But it's busy work. It's stuff that if you took a step back and you stopped spinning, you'd probably solve it in an hour. But since you don't take a step back and you're stressed because your boss, who doesn't understand tech at all, is wondering why it's not fixed, right? But I want to go back. I mean, I get where you're going with that quote, but that's not a practical tool, right? We can throw quotes out all day long, but I mean that's for LinkedIn and people that want to be influencers. Let's actually provide some useful information, practices, ideas that can allow our audience to succeed at reducing their stress.
Well, I was getting there, but I had to throw out the big LinkedIn-y stuff first. Come on. I think that so where all of this came from is my own journey with simplifying my life, right? And you and I did this in kind of a backward way. We used to be big nature people, and then because of conditions, mine included, like, we ended up not being big nature people, and it was tearing at our soul. So we ended up going down the van life journey, I guess. And but for
Adventure.
us, it wasn't van life, it was short school bus life. And for anybody who has even considered the idea of van life or being off grid or living simpler, one of the things that keeps coming up with that is the idea of essentialism. Is this the idea of, well, to go back to Greg McKeown, who is the essentialist, if you look up that book, is the relentless pursuit of less but better. And I grabbed a hold of essentialism because I realized through my adventure with van life that I didn't need probably 90% of what I was told I needed. Like, I didn't need all the fancy curtains and all the fancy doodads and all of the things that, I mean, to most people are like essential. But if you think about it, it's really just noise. And so I wanted to bring this up because this has helped me reduce my stress, because the things that we do carry, not only in our personal lives, like our stuff, which we'll get into a little bit later, but our emotional things that we don't let go of, and our constant insistence of saying yes is just, it's polluting our ability to actually be present and get things done. And so that leads to stress.
It's funny that you brought up all the things we don't need. I mean, we've lived this uh, opportunity over the last year. For our listeners that don't know, we had 2,100 square feet, 4 bedroom. We had a 1,000 square foot shop. We had 10 acres in Western Washington. Um, we had all the things that you would expect from your standard chasing the Joneses type family. And we moved to Montana where we don't even have plumbing. And we live in 597 square feet, and there is no shop. There's a shed, that's small, little shed, a little shed, is just big enough for my tools, of which I didn't bring probably half of them because I didn't need them, and a couple of freezers for food. Um, no, I'm not suggesting that this is for everybody. I'm not even suggesting it's necessarily for us. It's just where we are, in our life now. Um, but when you talk about only doing or having what's essential, I think that where we're really leaning is intention.
I'm glad you brought that up. It actually goes back to, way back when we started this podcast, we brought up Stephen Covey and how he says, if you don't design your own life, someone else will. Well, in essentialism, it's, if you don't prioritize your own life, someone else will.
That's right,
And
and sorry, go ahead.
well, I mean, if we're doing all the things all the time, right? We're not prioritizing our own life. And I know that, jobs have requirements and to-do lists and all of that. But if you really think about it from an energy consumption thing and what essentialism is trying to communicate, it's if you have energy going in a million different directions, you're really not going to feel fulfilled at the end of that because you're only making like a little tiny bit of progress in all of those areas. However, if you get rid of the noise and you focus on only the essential areas for work and for personal life, your fulfillment and your progress on those things is way up here compared to all of the non essentials. And when we don't prioritize what those things are, other people do for us.
So, from a entrepreneur capitalist perspective, a really easy way to think about this, folks, is return on investment. Everything that you do in your life should have a return on investment that is in the positive, not the negative. So when we say things like, either you design your life or somebody else does, that's not to suggest that we don't, you have expectations, you're being paid for your job, those types of things, but that doesn't mean you can't have boundaries, that allow your job to be a return on investment. As a job or career, as an employee or a team member, the amount of energy that you put in at the end of the day, or maybe it's not every day, sometimes life happens in unfortunate ways, but at the end of the week or the end of the term or end of the quarter, whatever the case may be, you should be able to step back and say to yourself, that was worth it. And it should be worth it for more than just the paycheck, right? That's part of life. And as a business owner, I need to be able to look at a team member as an asset, not a resource, right? Because assets grow, they have a return on investment. Resources don't, they shrink, right? And eventually they deplete. So when we're talking about, life with intention, a really good example was this morning. Since we don't have plumbing, we have to haul our water. Well, I had to get the generator running so that the well would work. And we got not going to go into why the generator wasn't running, but it wasn't. It is now. Uh, and in the process, I also had to fill the water tank for our shower, right? So by intentionally choosing to take 15 minutes to get the generator running, not only did I make sure that we have water for the shower for the next week, week and a half, I also made sure that we had water for the house or for the cabin for the next week. I intentionally chose to combine tasks for the highest return on investment of my time. And the great thing about it is there is a direct positive result,
Mhm.
right? So go ahead. Thought you were going to say something.
I like what you said there of like you are being intentional about thinking forward of how it's going to pay off, not just what you need, but also what you need at a later time. And that's one simple way to lean into essentialism. One thing that you said that what I thought was really funny is companies and their priorities. And I mean, you and I own a business. We know what it's like to have a priority and go after it. And then other things get in the way and you're trying to achieve it. We have a client, and I'm not gonna say who they are, but for years, we would get on the phone with them weekly, and they would say, "This is P1, priority 1. This is P2, this is P3, this is P4, and this is P5." And by the end, you have, like, 10 priorities. And what I love about essentialism and this book specifically is it's like, if you have 10 priorities, you have none, right? You're not prioritizing anything, and yet there's so many companies out there who are like, "Yeah, we're gonna do all the things all the time," and that is such a lie. It's the whole "you can have it all" lie from society that is just it drives up your stress too. I mean, it's a nonstop, like you're in fight or flight because you can't achieve all of the things all of the time.
Oh, well, that's definitely true, and we do see it with our more than one. They are so upside down with basically, they're paying for the price of past decisions, right? That's usually why clients come to us, right? They've made past decisions that weren't necessarily great. They come to us because we're experts. We clean it up, and then they love us, and they never fire us because, well, then they would be back in their past decision, cycle. And some people be like, "Oh, right, you never get fired." It's actually true. I mean, we have clients that are 22 years with us that still use us every week. But I mean, that's not to boast. It's to say that in business, while yes, you do have a lot of different factors. You've got the fact that this engineer is out sick, this engineer is on pregnancy leave, this competitor just, upped their product, which makes your product look old. The fact that humans, as a general rule, don't realize that we literally have nothing new. Everything that we have today, we had yesterday, but because it's not as shiny as what we saw today, somehow it's not as good enough what came out yesterday. And you can see this all over the place where, people buy new cars, right? I have a 2015 F-150, and there is literally 0 reason for me to get a 2026, except that I wanna spend 90 grand for no reason, right? It
Well, I mean, for the first time we talked about this a couple episodes ago, but for the first time in history, like, we have an unlimited amount of options, and it goes back to that book, The Paradox of Choice, and when you have so many different options, you also have all of the social pressure that comes with it, and with that social pressure is everybody else sharing their opinions on your life and decisions.
I think it's funny you said that, because we all know where I stand with that. I have 2 fingers for you if you try to tell me what I should be doing about my life if I didn't ask you, right? People, if you wanna manage your stress, I'll give you one simple, very practical tool to manage your stress. Mind your own business, not others, right? Worry about you. You don't need to worry about Karen. She creates all her own problems. Or I think Brad Williams' Karen is Carol, right? You don't need to worry about Carol or Karen, right? Worry about you and yours and focus on that and make your decisions based on that. Is this good for me? Is this good for my spouse? Is this good for my child? If your child is in swim and theater and track and has a job, you need to drop 3 of those things. It's bad for your child. Now, you don't think of it that way because you're prepping them for adulthood or that scholarship or whatever the case may be. But all people, especially children, but all people need to be able to take a breath without worrying about, oh my God, what are they going to think? And every one of those things I just listed is all about what somebody else thinks or expects of you.
Mhm. Which is why so much of our day is filled with non-essentials and saying yes to things and not actually thinking about it or considering, are you investing in the right thing for you and your family right now?
That's a really good point. Are you investing in what's good for you or your family right now? I would say that most people don't think that way. They don't think, am I doing this for me or my family? They think, I'm doing this for the next raise or that promotion or that boat I want to get, which all of those are valid. There's nothing wrong with that. But that should be the reward for the decisions you make for yourself and your family. It shouldn't be the decisions themselves.
I yeah, I mean, that's why I think that essentialism is so powerful. I mean, cutting out the non-essentials, cutting out what we by default, with our autopilot, going back to that, we add into our lives. Like our project manager, she had back-to-back meetings. Like, she starts her time zone's slightly different than the US right now, and so she starts her day at, like, 4 a.m., and she had, I think, 8 meetings back to back, all for, like, all of Monday and Tuesday. That was her life, and then I was like, "This is gonna destroy you."
Mhm.
And it's even just adding a 15-minute break in there is so healthy for you. They've actually shown how the brain reacts to nonstop meetings and how it just deteriorates. Like they've watched the scans of what happens to your brain and your capacity. If you take a 10-minute break between phone calls, by the end of your day, you're actually still functionable. But if you don't, it's gone, right? And so if you get to the point where you're at home and you're doing that to yourselves, and then you're trying to have any type of semblance of energy for your family or partner or even yourself, it's completely gone. But that's simply because we're just allowing the non-essentials to take up all of our time. And I'm not saying that those meetings aren't essential, but I am saying that we can do those meetings in a way that's better suited for us and our health.
So, a couple things there as we start to wrap up. One, before you schedule or attend a meeting, ask yourself, could this be an email? Two, apparently now functionable is a word.
Yes.
Yes, functionable. All right, folks. Thank you so much for listening and watching. We hope you found it useful. This has been another episode of Health and Tech with Amanda Nystrom.